The reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, verses 54 through 62. Then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. But Peter was following at a distance. When they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat among them. Then a servant girl, seeing him in the firelight, stared at him and said, "This man also was with him." But he denied it, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." A little later, someone else, on seeing him, said, "You also are one of them." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." Then about an hour later, still another kept insisting, "Surely this man also was with him, for he is a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you are talking about." At that moment, while he was still speaking, the cock crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
For the past few weeks, we've been in a worship series called Life, Death, and Disney. We have thought about issues and questions around life and death as those issues are explored in a few Disney movies. And, we bring the Bible in every now and then too, because, we got to do that. But as we have thought about death and we've thought about life together, some themes have started to emerge over the weeks, including the theme of memory. Remembering, and how important it is to remember our story, to remember our identity, to remember what life means, and remember to live it. Author Ta-Nehisi Coates, in his novel The Water Dancer, explores the theme of memory. And he writes, "Memory is the chariot, and memory is the way, and memory is the bridge from the curse of slavery to the boon of freedom." Memory is the bridge to freedom. Memory of the past shapes our experience of the present. We know this. Psychologists know this. They know that memory helps us navigate life. Because as we remember, we can anticipate and make predictions about what's happening in the world around us. And we know that when memory is impaired, it impacts our ability to do so. When memory is impaired, it impacts multiple other health issues as well. Anxiety, depression, substance abuse disorders. It impacts our behavioral health and our cognitive function. Memory is the bridge to freedom. As we remember this week, we remember a while back for this week's movie, The Lion King. How many of you remember when The Lion King came out? 1994. Our choir wasn't even born when The Lion King came out in 1994. In my mind, that's 1994 is like 6 years ago. I don't know how that works. But that's like 30 years ago, y'all. 30 years this movie came out. It won, when it came out, 2 different Academy Awards. The first one was for Best Musical Score. Hans Zimmer scored the movie, and it is absolutely gorgeous. The other Academy Award that it won is for Best Original Song. Now, no less than 3 of the songs from the movie were nominated for Best Original Song. There were a couple others from a couple other movies, but 3 Lion King songs were nominated. I'm going to tell you what the nominees were, and then you're going to see if you can remember which one won the Oscar. So, the songs that were nominated for Best Original Song were "Can You Feel the Love Tonight?" Okay, "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" was nominated. Also nominated, "Hakuna Matata," which means no worries for the rest of your days, I understand. And then finally, the third nominee was "It's the Circle of Life." Circle of Life. So we got "Can You Feel the Love Tonight?" Hakuna Matata, and Circle of Life. So if you are online, put it in the comments right now your vote among those three, all right? And if you're here in the room, this is your chance. So raise your hand if you think that the best song for the year was Can You Feel the Love Tonight? How many of you are going with Can You Feel the Love Tonight? All right, good. How many of you think it was Hakuna Matata? All right, these are our no worries people, right? And how many of you think it was the Circle of Life? Oh, Circle of Life seems to have won. However, if you said, drum roll please, if you said, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? You win. I don't know. What did they win, Kevin? I don't know what they win, but you win. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? The Oscar for the best original song from this movie. This movie, The Lion King, was hand-drawn animation, and it remains to this day the highest grossing film that was hand-drawn. Animation changed pretty soon after this and became a lot of computer-generated stuff. This is the film that made the most money of all the hand-drawn films ever. It also has inspired multiple other works, including a Broadway version of the story, coming to the Fabulous Fox this June, by the way. And it inspired a prequel that nobody actually saw, and a sequel that also nobody actually saw because they came straight to video and they weren't all that great. But anyway, it inspired them. There are not one, but two different cartoon television series that are in the Lion King's universe, and the unfortunate but kind of cool 2019 remake, which is done with CGI. And so it's, kind of nothing is going to be as good as the original one. I am speaking from a purely biased perspective, I know, but the original one was the best. But it has inspired a lot of different works. It's obviously sort of a part of the world, right? Because even though it's 30 years old, people are still resonating with this movie, with this story, with the songs in it. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. It's about Simba, right? So the main character is a lion, figure, named Simba. And as the story begins, he's a cub. His father is the king of the Pride Lands. They live in this place called Pride Rock. And his father, Mufasa, is preparing Simba to be the king because he just can't wait to be king. That's fine. If you didn't get that, that's fine. That's a song, and they say, just can't wait to be... Never mind. So Simba can't wait to be king, and Mufasa is sort of training him, preparing him to take that role in the story. However, now, this worship series is called Life, Death, and Disney, so you know someone's got to die. Unfortunately, in this story, it is Mufasa in one of the saddest and most tragic scenes ever in any movie of any time. So Mufasa is killed by his brother Scar. Brilliantly portrayed by Jeremy Irons, by the way. So Scar kills Mufasa, and then Scar convinces Simba that it's his fault. Oh, Simba, what have you done? Oh, just rips your heart out, man. So Simba is terrified. He's so scared because he thinks he's killed his own father, and he runs away from home in this shameful, fearful way. He runs away from everything he knows because he is unable or maybe unwilling to face the challenge that lies ahead of him. The fear and the shame in that moment drive him away, and in an act of self-preservation, in an act of survival, sheer survival, out of fear for his life, he runs away from everything, his community, his family, everything he ever knew, and from his place in the story. There is a sense in which we could say that Simba forgets who he is, that Simba intentionally forgets his place in his community's story, and he runs away and hides. Now he ends up in this oasis out in the middle of nowhere with his buddies Timon and Pumbaa, who teach him a new way of being in the world, with the song Hakuna Matata. And it appears to be a life of freedom, a life where there are no worries for the rest of your days. It appears to be a life of freedom. And so he enjoys himself in this oasis, disconnected from everything he ever knew. But how free is his life here? Honestly, really? when it is fear for his life that has driven him to live this way. So how free do you think he really is? So Simba reminds me a lot of Peter. In today's reading, we heard about Peter, whose rabbi is Jesus, who is the Messiah, who is the Son of God, who is now preparing Peter for his role in the story. Peter is to be the rock upon which the church is built. And Jesus is training him up for that role, naming that in him and naming that as his calling and preparing him to take that role. And Jesus dies. In the midst of that, Jesus dies. He is betrayed by his own brother Judas, who betrays him. As he dies, Peter is there beside him, and he is afraid to admit that he's a follower of Jesus. He is accused. This man was with him, and he's ashamed of this knowledge. He's ashamed of this story. He denies any connection to knowing Jesus at all. He is unable, or should we say unwilling, to face the challenges that lie ahead. His act of denial arises from his fear, it arises from his shame, and it is an act of self-preservation. It is a survival tactic. He fears for his life, and so he runs away from it. Metaphorically, he runs away from his relationship with Jesus. He runs away from his role in the story. He runs away from the community that he knows and is a part of. In a sense, Peter forgets who he is. Peter intentionally forgets his place in the story, his place in the community. Confronted with the death of Jesus and the threat of his own death, he forgets and runs away and hides. He goes so far as to say, not only am I not his follower, I don't even know him. He tries to set himself free from his relationship with Jesus. He tries to set himself free from that expectation. But how free is he really? How free is he really? A theologian named Frederick Buechner writes about the denial, saying it was a denial, but it was also the truth. Peter really did not know who Jesus was, did not really know, and neither do any of us really know who Jesus is either. Beyond all we can find to say about him and believe about him, he remains always beyond our grasp, except maybe once in a while the hem of his garment. We should never forget that. We can love him, we can learn from him, but we can come to know him only by following him, by searching for him in his church, in the Gospels, and in each other. And so when Peter says, I don't know him, he is motivated by fear, he is motivated by self-preservation, and in a way, what he said was absolutely true. He doesn't know him. Neither do any of us know him. None of us are free to say, we know Jesus. So here he is, the rock. Peter, the rock, the foundation upon which the church is going to be built, hiding, running away, forgetting who he is, forgetting the community he's a part of, forgetting the story. He had been the first to confess Jesus is the Messiah. He had been privy to the transfiguration, seeing the true essence of Christ. It is him now, in the face of Jesus' death, who forgets. In the face of the threat to his own life, he denies, he forgets, he represses. How can we blame him, right? How can we blame him? How often would we rather forget and just run away and hide rather than deal with things that are difficult, deal with things that are upsetting, deal with things that are emotional? Isn't it sometimes tempting to just avoid grief altogether, avoid sorrow, avoid that difficult emotional labor, and instead just run away into denial or into some kind of toxic positivity? Oh, I'm fine. Ask someone this morning how they are. And when they say, I'm fine, just say, no, really. Because you know they're not. Sometimes it feels like we live as part of a culture that doesn't value honestly expressed grief. It doesn't value naming the experience of pain, real pain. We live in a world that doesn't value confessing the feeling of shame, and so we just shove it way down deep and pretend that everything's fine. And sometimes it's not about just avoiding difficult things. Sometimes it really is a survival tactic. Sometimes we are really running away and hiding from something that is a threat to us, to our very being, even to our very life. And that can especially be true when we face death, when we consider death the most profound existential threat, and one that faces each and every one of us. The death of a loved one, for example. Or, for example, as we try to wrap our minds around the thought of 927,000 deaths from a single virus in our country alone. Can we even begin to comprehend the idea of 5.85 million deaths worldwide in this world scarred by COVID? We cannot run away and hide from that. We cannot run away and hide. We can grieve. We can express the big, complicated feelings that are going on within us in the face of that. Grieving is the appropriate response for such contemplations. Grieving is a healthy way to remember who we are, to remember the story. As we grieve, we honor and remember our place, and memory is a bridge to freedom. Remembering sets us free. Memories of the past shape our experience of the present. So, as the story goes along in The Lion King, Simba's out there in the oasis with Timon and Pumbaa, living the Hakuna Matata life, and his childhood friend Nala comes and finds him. Nala is the one who reminds him of who he is. Initially calling him back home again, she describes what's going on back at Pride Rock. She describes the story and the turn that it has taken, and urges him to come back and remember his role, remember his place, remember his community, and become a part of that community once again. And Simba hears that call and begins to understand it. And then here comes Rafiki, this kind of Holy Spirit figure in the story. And he puts words and actions around this calling, reminding Simba that his ancestors live in him, that he is a part of something bigger than just himself, reminding Simba of the community to which he belongs. And Simba finally comes to a point where he realizes he needs to return. He says to Rafiki, I know that I have to do it. I know I have to go back. But going back means I'll have to face my past. I've been running from it for so long. At which point Rafiki hits him on the head with a stick. And Simba says, ow, geez, what was that for? And Rafiki said, it doesn't matter. It's in the past. Simba replies, yeah, but it still hurts. To which Rafiki responds, oh yes, the past can hurt. But from the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. And then he swings the stick at him again, and this time Simba ducks out of the way. Immediately after that conversation, Simba returns. He returns home again. And he takes his place in the story. He takes his place in the community. A couple of chapters after the passage that Jennifer read for us a little bit ago, in Luke 24, we read the story of the resurrection. In Luke's version of this story, there is a group of women who go to the tomb where Jesus had been buried. They find that tomb empty. They do not encounter the risen Christ at that moment. They instead encounter angels. And the angels ask them to do a very simple and yet very important thing. They say, remember what he said. Remember what he said. Your memories of the past will shape your experiences of the present. So remember what he said. And Luke tells us that the women then remembered. They remembered what they had been told. And so they rushed back to tell the others. The men huddled in the room out of fear for their lives. Having remembered what he said, having remembered the story, the women went to tell them the good news. And we read in Luke 24 that it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. Because men, right? Am I right? They did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves, and then he went home amazed at what had happened. You see, the witness of those women, their remembering and their ability to share the story stirred Peter. They reminded him of who he was. They reminded him of the story and his role in it. Their memory and their reminder was a bridge to freedom. So he got up out of that stuck place and he ran home again. Later on in the story, after the Emmaus moment, Jesus appears to the disciples. They are in this room and Jesus shows up in their midst. And Luke, as a wonderful storyteller, gives us 6 different adjectives to describe their reaction. Luke tells us they were startled. They were terrified, they were frightened, they were joyful, they were disbelieving, and they were wondering. They had some big, complicated feelings going on. They should have run away. To deal with all that, let's just hide, let's just squash that down. Surely we can't feel these things, can we? And Jesus, in response to all of this, and all of their big feelings, Jesus asks them a simple and yet brilliant question. You guys have anything to eat? I mean, it's Jesus, so you would expect the brilliant question, right? But this is a brilliant question. Do you have anything to eat? Jesus completes the return. Jesus reminds them of what it means to be in community together, to sit at a table together. The return to community, the return to the story, the return to connection with a simple, profound, sacred question, a sacrament. Let's share a meal together at the table. It's not anything new. They had eaten dozens, probably hundreds of meals before. This was not a new experience for them. Jesus was reminding them, helping them to remember, not with words, but with actions, what it means to belong together. Just by asking them, do you have anything to eat? Jesus disrupts the entire power dynamic of the moment, breaking them free from their fear. Oh yeah, they think, we have food, we can do this, we remember, let's share this meal together. Memory is the bridge to freedom, and memory is the power by which community is restored. The good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ is that no matter how far away you have run, you can always return home. The good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ says that no matter how long you have been away, it's never too late to come home again. No matter what survival tactics you have used to keep yourself safe by isolating yourself from the rest of the world, there is a grace-filled community in which you can be free. A community that knows that yes, indeed, the past may hurt. And of course you can run from it, but together we can learn from it and return home. And the flip side of the gospel is the same. The flip side of that same powerful truth asks the church a pretty important question. Are we a community that is ready to receive those who are coming back home? Are we a community that is ready to receive, without condition, those who are returning home again? Do we have truly open arms, ready to receive all? And when we say all, do we mean all? And not only are we standing here waiting for folks to return, that's not the gospel task. Our welcome statement says we extend God's grace and love to all persons. So who's going to take it out? Who are the Nalas? Who are the Rafikis who are going to go out and find those? Find those folks who are hiding. Find those folks who have run away and announce the good news, saying, do you remember the story that you are a part of? And bring them back home again. Who are the Marys and the Joannas who will go and seek the lost? Seek those who, for the sake of their very survival, have insulated and isolated themselves from the community. And then, upon the return, upon the grand return, who will be here with open arms to welcome and celebrate? Who will go and kill the fatted calf in preparation for the feast? Who will sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us? Who will sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us? Manchester United Methodist Church, are we a community that is ready to receive those who are coming back home? And if we are not, what do we have to change in order to become that? In order to be that kind of church, that kind of community? If we actually believe the gospel, if we actually believe that it's never too late to come home again, if the grace of God means anything to us at all, let's do everything we possibly can to be that kind of church. Amen? Amen.